Senator Marcel NIAT Njifenji and the Right Honorable CAVAYE get a renewed mandate at the Senate and the National Assembly in separate elective plenary sittings. They expressed gratitude to their party chairman for the investiture. Accessing COVID-19 screening centers is a challenge for inhabitants as a shortage of testing kits is rumored. Health Minister Manawuda Malashi reassures on the availability of the equipment and calls for massive turnout. Sexual perversion in the school milieu lands 15 teenagers in court. They are charged on 3 counts in courts for debasement and drug abuse. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Those were the headlines of the 7:30 News.
I urge you once again to put on your face masks, to wash your hands regularly, and to consult a physician or any other health personnel if you notice any symptoms. This is the only way to save lives and to curb the spread of the virus.
You're welcome back. The Right Honorable CAVAYE will lead the 23-member Bureau of the National Assembly for the 2021 legislative year after his re-election today. The poll took place in the plenary sitting, chaired by the eldest member of the National Assembly, Honorable Laurentine Kwa-Mfegembede, the Senior Vice President, 5 Deputy Speakers, 4 questors and 12 secretaries equally had their mandate renewed. Charles Ebone reports on the elective plenary sitting at the National Assembly.
Here is the Bureau to conduct the activities of the National Assembly for the 2021 legislative year. House Speaker Honorable CAVAYE is re-elected with 147 votes.
My profound
gratitude goes to the President of the Republic, Paul Biya. Just like the senior Deputy House Speaker, Honorable Hilarion Eton, the other Deputy House Speakers are elected, plus the 12 secretaries of the National Assembly.
Thank God Almighty, and of course thank His Excellency President Paul Biya, the chairperson of my party, who has given me this investiture.
Now we have to work, because before the Bureau we could not work. Now we can work.
The measure is Anglophone crisis.
For the Bureau to be elected, activities of work at the National Assembly were conducted this morning by the eldest member of the National Assembly, Honorable Laurentine Kwa-Mfegembede.
I'm really happy to make it again because I was already a member of this bureau.
Now work can resume in earnest at the National Assembly as the House Bureau is known.
Still in Parliament for the 9th consecutive time, Senator Marcel NIAT Njifenji is voted President of the Senate during the elective sitting presided over by the eldest member of the House, Fon Victor Isimisongo Mukete, and later on the Senate President. The 17-member Bureau was reinstated with the exception of Senator Emilian Keze, replaced by Senator Vanigansen Mochigil as one of the Vice Presidents. Charles Anyangwe tells us more.
The Permanent Bureau of the Upper House of Parliament for the 2021 legislative period is now known. Marcel NIAT Njifenji was re-elected for the 9th consecutive time, scoring an absolute majority of 85 valid vote cast out of 93. The election was chaired by the eldest member of the House, Victor Isimisongo Mukete. Senators expressed their joy following the re-election of Senator NIAT.
And we were very delighted to see him to be in the top of the Senate.
The entire House has a lot of confidence on him, and that's why he was re-elected as the President of the Senate.
After the election of the President, according to the standing orders of the Senate, The president of the Provisional Bureau left the rostrum to the president-elect NIAT Njifenji Maxwell to continue with the election of the other members of the Permanent Bureau. It started with the proposal of Abubakar Abdullahi to the post of senior vice president by the CPD and parliamentary group leader Oyono Zhang Calvin. The elections were carried out in a transparent atmosphere, with Abubakar Abdullahi scoring an absolute majority of 92 votes out of 93. This was followed by the election of 4 vice presidents, with SDF Senator Vani Gangsin Moshigar making his entry, taking the place of Senator Nkeza Emilia as vice president. All the 3 quaestors, 8 secretaries of the 8th legislative period were all re-elected. Senate President Maxwell Njifenji congratulated all those elected and urged them to work together to ensure peace and national unity in the country.
Away from Parliament, to curb the ascending wave of the coronavirus in the school milieu, thousands of students and teachers across Cameroon have been screened for the disease. At the weekly interministerial committee to monitor government's repose strategy against the pandemic, the Minister of Public Health, Manawuda Malashi, reassured on the intensification of testing. It was chaired by the Prime Minister Joseph John Gute, with strategies to enforce the respect of barrier measures examined. Christian Chatham has the details.
The statistics presented by the Minister of Public Health indicate that since the outbreak of the pandemic, Cameroon has recorded 44,669 positive cases of COVID-19 infection, with 38,820 recoveries for 721 deaths.
We have done much more tests this week. We have up to 132,000 tests, and I think we have recorded so many cases also. We have the same rate of positivity. We are in 4% of positivity.
Concerning the choice of vaccine and the moment for vaccination in Cameroon, he said the scientific committee has recommended more time to study the situation. The meeting, chaired by Prime Minister Joseph John Gute, also focused on strategies to enforce the application of barrier measures in the country. The Delegate General for National Security, Martin Bangangile, and the Secretary of State for Defense in charge of the National Gendarmerie, Galaxy Toga, presented exposés on strategies envisaged to enforce compliance with barrier measures across the country. Prime Minister Joseph John Gute has prescribed the strict application of barrier measures by all administrations as a means of breaking the chain of COVID-19 contamination in Cameroon.
As announced in one of our top stories, rumors of insufficient COVID-19 test kits in approved screening centers across the country have been debunked by the Ministry of Public Health. Minister Manawuda Malashi urges the population to set their minds at rest and to go for the coronavirus test, given the ample quantity of equipment dispatched for the exercise. This was at the press briefing today in Yaoundé. Alice Mbey was there and now reports for the 7:30 News.
Officials of the Ministry of Public Health say rumors about the shortage of the COVID-19 test kits is not true. Speaking to the press this Thursday in Yaoundé, Minister Manawuda Malashi confirmed the availability of enough COVID-19 testing materials to satisfy the demand of the population.
The national laboratories still have 4,050 rapid diagnostic test kits and 6,624 polymerase chain release test kits. We have also received 5,016 TDRO antigen kits and 3,200 TDRO antibio kits. We can boast of 60,000 TDRO kits while waiting for the next supply of 400,000 TDRO kits expected next week.
A medical practitioner at the Yaoundé Multipurpose Sport Complex Testing Center also clarifies the situation.
We deposit samples 3 times per day. This is to permit the laboratories to finish their work on time. When we are short of stock, we get more from the regional delegation of public health.
All and sundry has been advised to continue going to the different centers as more COVID-19 screening kits are supplied.
Airports are a significant entry point of the coronavirus, and authorities are redoubling efforts to check an escalation with renewed calls from government to implement barrier measures. Rigorous and time-saving routines are applied to the satisfaction of travelers. Prince Will Mukwele Aduma was at the Simalen International Airport in Yaoundé to watch the operation. This is what he brought back.
An 11 a.m. arrival at the Simaleng Thursday mobilized the entire structure against a common enemy, the coronavirus.
I like it.
The airport security scrutiny of minute details subjected the CRTV team that in turn observed the step-by-step check of passengers into the country.
I'm come from France, and just the time to have a PCR test is 48 hours. In the airport in Yaoundé, they take 50 minutes.
The exercise that had become routine is seen to have witnessed a reinforcement in line with government's response strategy to the resurgence.
Cameroon is very successful coping with coronavirus. I know the government of Cameroon very reliable test system.
If measures are no respecter of persons, follow-up is collective.
We are in charge of the following up of all the measures taken by the government for the fight against COVID-19 at airports.
The virus check at the airport end, vital, observers say.
The involvement of school-going children in the Basin Act, such as sexual promiscuity, is gradually being uncovered due to the vigilance of onlookers. In the K neighborhood of Yaoundé, 15 pupils from 4 secondary schools were caught red-handed in acts of orgies and drug abuse. They were apprehended and are now charged on 3 counts. Cynthia Saptala has the details.
The scene took place in this residence at a K in Yaoundé. The neighbors had alerted the head of the neighborhood that a strange activity was going on in here involving a number of students who should have been in their classrooms.
It's been going on now for over 5 months. The population had noticed students from different secondary schools coming here on motor taxis as early as 7:30 a.m. when the proprietor had left for work. After making the observation myself, I realized what was going on was abnormal, so I had to call police officers to intervene.
One of the major witnesses and author of the video of the arrest was this neighbor, who says the sounds coming from the house drew their attention and confirmed the belief that the children were involved in orgies. He says, though he tried on several occasions to caution the kids on their behavior, he was sometimes met with threats. And out of the 15 apprehended, 7 were boys, all adults, and 8 girls, minors, and from 5 students at the GBHS Ekunu.
We are so sorry to be involved in such a phenomenon. Once the video was out, we were able to identify the girls involved, and their parents have been called to an extraordinary disciplinary council where the fate of the girls will be decided.
The principal also adds that the girls in question were immediately sent home to wait for the decision taken by school authorities. As for the boys, one of which was the nephew of the proprietor of the residence and said organizer, they were apprehended by elements of the 14th District Police Station situated in Ekunu. According to the police authority, though investigations are still ongoing, they have been charged with the illicit consumption of drugs, corruption of minors, and the absence of identification. Given it involves adults as well as minors, all 15 await the decision of the Public Ministry State Council.
And on our series on violence in schools, the case of juvenile delinquency in government bilingual high school Colbison, where a student stabbed and killed his mathematics teacher, is a glaring example of failing morals. Over a year onwards, the horror witnessed in the institution is indelible and requires authorities to come up with mechanisms that protect teachers. Cynthia Saptala went back to the school campus to find out what has changed in terms of discipline.
It's been a year that a former student here was responsible for the death of his mathematics teacher. Today, the government bilingual high school Colbison in Yaoundé looks like any other. All students must wear their face mask upon arrival. In addition to this meticulous check for any harmful objects, even phones, medication and liquid substances are being seized, changes that were installed after that tragic episode.
We tighten our vigilance on campus. We have increased the number of our superintendent generals from 7 to 9. Same with controllers who are stationed in the different sectors of the campus. The administrative staff does several rounds of the campus, and we do numerous unexpected routine checks in the classroom.
One of such changes imposed to the staff is to abstain from altercations with students. There is a procedure that has been put in place to handle such situations.
Lorsqu'on sent qu'ils deviennent agités,
when students become agitated, we call the superintendent for this sector of the campus and sometimes reinforcement when need be. We do not move away from the scene, but we neither get too close.
The death of a 26-year-old teacher last January 13, 2020 was enough tragedy. The school authorities say these measures will be upheld continuously.
In other news, government's commitment to provide decent work and decent pay to workers is being elaborated in a national labour policy. At the 341st session of the Board of Directors of the International Labour Organization, the Minister of Labour and Social Security, Gregoire Owona, highlighted government's plan to protect the rights of employees. Lou Maslim Davis reports.
Cameroon's declaration during the board meeting of the International Labour Organization for Board of Directors was in line with that of the African group expressed earlier. The Minister of Labour and Social Security, Gregoire Owona, who spoke for Cameroon government, saluted the collaboration of partner institutions and said thanks to a combined action, many countries are henceforth promoting the declaration and applying the principles, especially at this period of the health crisis. The Labour Minister highlighted the Abidjan Declaration of December 2019, which seek to promote, amongst other key initiatives, an agenda for decent work in Africa for the year 2020-2030. He solicited the assistance of the ILO Bureau to buttress this initiative. Gregoire Owona noted that the African group invited the Bureau to ensure a follow-up of this declaration in all regions of the world, which are mostly headquarters hosting multinational enterprises.
A project to train more than 300 young Cameroonians in diverse fields, sponsored by the African Union, has been launched in Yaoundé. The specificities were presented to the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, Issa Chiroma Bakari, by the President of the Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Crafts. Victor Siga has details on the audience.
The project dubbed Archipelago is initiated by the African Union and seeks to ensure the professional training and insertion of some 360 young Cameroonians selected from the 10 regions. The meeting between the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training and the President of CIMA was to give a broad understanding of the initiative.
Archipelago is an European Union program in order to set up a program to make the training of young people. With
the sum of 325 million CFA francs injected into the project, the selected will be trained in auto mechanics and agro processing. The main objective is not only to fight youth unemployment, but also to reduce the number of young Cameroonians scrambling for Europe.
Despite our efforts, COVID-19 plunged many families into mourning and seriously hampered the functioning of our economy and society.
It's a few seconds to 7:50, and the massive screening of the population for COVID-19 has been instituted by the state to flatten the curve of infections in the country, isolating initial cases Testing and contact tracing are intended to reduce community transmission. The process involves all citizens and is carried out according to specified plans. Baldwin Sama is at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center and talks to Dr. Frank Amabo about the vast screening. Hello, Baldwin.
It's one of the strategies adopted by health professionals in Cameroon, the 3 T's, to track, test and treat as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Who are those targeted in the different regions of Cameroon? Let's find out from our guest, Dr. Frank Amabo. He is an epidemiologist. Good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening, Baldwin.
With the ongoing mass screening for COVID-19, who are those targeted in the different regions?
Thank you, Baldwin, for bringing that up. First, I would like to say that Cameroon, under the leadership of the Minister of Health, was one of the first countries to use rapid diagnostic tests for mass screening. The idea in mass screening is that we want to rapidly detect cases so that we can isolate and treat them. It is worth of note that, interestingly, we target essentially frontline healthcare workers, notably those working in the Public Health Emergency Operations Center, for regular screening, so that because they are constantly in contact with COVID. But understand that mass screening can also be useful for persons working in ministries, in companies, and even in schools under certain circumstances.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frank Amabo, for all those explanations. Wherever you work, you should adhere if you are subjected to this mass screening as one of the measures put in place to limit the spread of the coronavirus in the 10 different regions of the country. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Baldwin Sama. And to reduce community transmission, a mobile COVID-19 sensitization caravan has been launched in Boya by the Southwest Regional Committee for the fight against the pandemic. The initiative is led by the governor of the Southwest region, Bernard Okalia-Bilai. The team combed streets, motorparks and markets to raise awareness on the observance of barrier measures. Larry Efande has details from Boya.
This is the busiest motor park in the region, mile 17. In chit-chats and wise counsels, the Southwest governor makes his opinion known. It's a call to moral consciousness given the increase in COVID-19 cases, but he's taken aback with the complacency.
Most of the people, they have their mask belt in their pocket. To wear the mask is not to please the authorities. It is to protect their own health, and by so doing, to protect the other people's health.
At this construction site in the university neighborhood of Moliko, no barrier measure is observed. He brings the bricklayers to a talk of conscience as he shares face masks to them. From schools to beer parlors, markets and streets, the crusade for COVID-19 barrier measures takes on. This regional committee for the fight against COVID-19 in the Southwest promised more stringent measures, hence, no challenge has been recorded lately, making the last 3 months to have snowballed in positive cases.
And now on to our Thursday of the regions. The far north is experiencing intermittent power cuts, making life difficult for the region's inhabitants who are already facing the scorching heat of the dry season. The shortage in electricity supply is due to a drop in water level of the Lagdo hydroelectricity dam. A reporter from the far north region, Ayokjon Ashu, says that despite efforts of the service provider that uses a thermal plant backup, the power cuts still persists.
Since December 2020, the Far North region has been witnessing inconsistency in electrical power supply, a phenomenon which the Minister of Water and Energy, during his working visit to Marwa on December the 16th, attributed to a decrease in the volume of water in the Lagdo Dam and announced remedial measures.
The head of state decided to move a part of the power plant from Ahala to these 3 regions.
Many months after, the blackout persists with far-reaching ramifications.
It's not easy at all for me to cope. We have this every day, so it doesn't help us at all because we spend almost all the time sleeping.
Light going on and off. Our things are getting bad in the fridge.
The situation has been compounded by the prevailing heat, and in the absence of electricity, there is no possibility to use artificial cooling systems.
You cannot even sleep with the heat. We are putting our beds outside to take fresh air.
Worse still, water supply, which requires electricity to ensure its flow, is also interrupted, leaving the population with no choice but to seek for alternatives, sometimes at their own risk and discomfort.
And faced with the persistent interruptions in electricity supply, the inhabitants of the Far North region have been adopting temporary measures as they wait for permanent solutions from government. They now resort to solar panels and electric generators whose demand has increased on the market. Sylvester Atemking tells us more.
Providing a lasting solution to the energy deficit has been a major preoccupation of the government, with an earmarked project to install a gigantic solar plant in the Far North region. But while waiting for this to materialize, individuals are adopting short-term solutions depending on their area of activity.
At first, I just bought this type of thing too. It can stay for 3 to 4 hours. So the two of them like this can make me read the whole night.
I use my phone to lighten my keyboard. If I have to type, I use the phone to look at what I have to do in my books, because most people try to use candles here and the results are very poor.
Meanwhile, given the difficulties to use cooling systems, which required electricity, some inhabitants of Marwa have devised methods to cope with the burning heat.
At first, I buy ice before I use in my house to drink even cold water. Fortunately, I have bought a generator for myself.
I've managed to buy a generator, and we are just managing it because it costs us a lot of money to buy petrol.
As the power outage, load shedding and even blackout continue to haunt the Far North region, expectations are that this nightmare soon becomes a thing of the past.
In culture, there has been a rich display of Cameroon's ancestral diversity and heritage at the African Institute for Computer Sciences. The third edition of the Cultural Day in the institution aims at promoting unity and living together amongst the students. Joyce Tata tells us more.
A trip back to their roots is the vision of the authorities of the African Institute of Computer Sciences in Cameroon for our students. This to interestingly blend with their passion for ICT.
L'union des cultures.
The union of culture is a strength for our nation. When joined with a technology, it becomes a good tool for development and our real values. By so doing, we could create riches, so I applaud this initiative of the students.
Une bombe qui va développer notre pays.
Through fashion parade and more, the students beautifully represented the 4 cultural zones of Cameroon to the watchful pleasure of dignitaries present.
This day, we commemorate the national unity and the national culture. It is very important.
In some sort of a peace era where we share cultural, musical, social and all the activities linked to the cultures.
The cultural event wrapped up with a visit to the various stands mounted, displaying the beauty of culture through agriculture and traditional meals.
On to religion, Christians of the Triumphant Faith Ministries International have begun a 4-day intensive prayer and deliverance program. The session is led by Nigerian-born prophet Isa El Buba, who arrived Cameroon yesterday. Victor Siga witnessed his landing at the Yaoundé-Simalène International Airport and now reports.
In strict respect of COVID-19 barrier measures, faithful of the Triumphant Faith Ministries International came in their numbers to welcome the one they believe can help address the multifaceted crisis Cameroon is facing.
Here in Cameroon on God's mission, and God sent me, and He has sent me with a message. He has sent me with a mandate and with a mission. And the mission is about repackaging the lives of people, restoring the destinies of men and women, and also restoring God's plan for the nation of Cameroon.
The Nigerian pastor, Prophet Isa El Buba, amongst other men of God for 4 days, are organizing a national prayer for peace in Cameroon.
Cameroon is a gateway to all the Francophone nations, and God has come in order to establish His presence. It's going to be morning and evening sessions, and it's going to be one of the most impactful moments anybody would have ever dreamt of.
The rendezvous, which started on the 17th at the Ministry of Oja, ends this Saturday, March 20.
Senator Marcel Nyanjifenji and the Right Honorable CAVAYE Jibril have had a renewed mandate at the Senate and the National Assembly in separate elective plenary sittings today. They expressed gratitude to their party chairman for the investiture, and in both houses, work can now begin in earnest. That will be all for this edition of the 7:30 News. Adon Bala will be yours at 8:30 p.m. for the news in the French language. Tomorrow, you'll be in the company of Ben and Bumagana. Have a lovely weekend ahead. Good night.
I urge you once again to put on your face masks, to wash your hands regularly, and to consult a physician or any other health personnel if you notice any symptoms. This is the only way to save lives and to curb the spread of the virus.